Oh, yeah. Oh, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Trade, Commerce, and Tourism special meeting. It's Tuesday. It's May 3rd. Councilwoman Janice Hahn, and so far it's just me. But we got two items on this, and we held these over from last time because we ran out of time at the last meeting, and Sergeant of Arms was coming up here to arrest us and get us down to council. So appreciate Mike. I know you guys came 2 weeks ago, you and Bob, and so thanks for coming back. Okay, item 1.
Under item 1, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for council approval a permanent board order and ordinance to amend the tariff, Section 20, relative to the Clean Air Action Plan and the Clean Truck Program, to strengthen or otherwise improve various provisions designed to reduce air emissions from drayage trucks.
Good morning, Council Member
Mike.
Hahn. Mike Christensen, Deputy Executive Director for the Harbor Department. With us today is Chris Cannon, the Director of the Environmental Management Division, and this item before you is really designed to close the loophole on
Right.
Class 7 trucks, and Chris can give you the details.
Tell us about this loophole.
Well, it's interesting. When we started the truck program, we had the truck program was based on CARB's program, their drayage truck rule. It focused on Class 8 trucks, and Class 8 trucks are what primarily or up until now primarily operated in the ports, and those are the heavy duty trucks that can take any loads over 33,000, well, any loads at all. And so they were operating, but as soon as the bans started to kick in, and in particular the January 1, 2010 ban, where we knocked out everything basically pre-2004,
Pre-2004.
that hit about 80% of the old drayage fleet, and it required a lot of new trucks. So all of a sudden, we saw a lot of Class 7 trucks operating. The drayage truck, the trucking companies, frankly, were smart. They looked at the tariff, they saw a loophole, they realized that they could operate these Class 7 trucks without, weren't subject to our tariff, and they weren't subject to a fee. So they began operating old Class 7 trucks. In some cases, they were trucks that had been sitting on their lots for a while because they never were used. But all of a sudden, because of this loophole, they started using
Because what's the loophole? I'm still...
Well, Class 8 trucks,
Right.
our tariff applies to Class 8 trucks, and so our progressive ban applies to Class 8 trucks.
Which
And
way?
The clean truck fee
And
also.
what constitutes a Class 8 truck
A Class
versus
8
a Class 7 truck?
A Class 7 truck, the DOT has classifications for the maximum gross vehicle weight rating for trucks, starting out with light-duty trucks that, like F-150s, all the way up to the biggest trucks. And the trucks you see on the
Pickup
road.
trucks.
Pickup
Okay,
trucks.
thank you.
Sorry.
F-150s. I'm like, sounds like a fighter.
I thought everybody
jet.
saw the commercials on TV. I'm sorry. It's the truck with the commercial with all the
Got it.
crazy things that they do to the truck.
Pickup truck, right.
Anyway, so what happened was the Class 8 trucks can pull anything. Class 7 trucks can only pull up to 33,000 pounds gross vehicle weight
Okay.
rating. So because they typically, the average container weighs 30,000 pounds.
Right.
So if you add the truck plus the container, that's over 33,000 pounds. So most containers can't even be moved by Class 7 trucks.
Right.
Because of all that, we didn't regulate them. Or regulate is the wrong word. We didn't ban them. The tariff only applied to Class 8s. But because Class 7s, the smaller trucks, weren't regulated, they could get in and out for free. They weren't subject to bans.
But I was hearing that what they were doing was getting outside of the port and then switching over.
That's stray-offs, and we're doing that too. But first, they could get in and out of our
Okay.
terminals essentially without being subject to the tariff. They had
Okay.
there was no ban
Okay.
requirement. There was no fee requirement. They could just get in and out. All they needed to do was to sign up, and they got it.
Why weren't the Class 7 ones part of our...
Because they
Clean
never
truck program.
operated in the ports. Again, we modeled our program after the state, and the state drayage rule. They're the
Okay.
entity that has jurisdiction to regulate trucks, and their drayage truck rule, which also intends to do the same thing as our program, was targeted toward Class 8 trucks because they're the heavy duty trucks, because they're the only ones that ever operated in ports. Up until now, the Class 7 trucks have rarely operated.
And just to clarify things a little, a Class 8 is the only vehicle that can carry, that can pull a fully loaded container. Has 2 axles under the rear end. Class 7s, generally speaking, have a single axle under the rear end. They cannot handle a fully loaded container, but they can handle empty containers.
And some light containers. And so, and of course, there's nobody standing there, with a weight at to
So
weigh
you're
them.
basically
some of
now,
them are even
so you're,
cheating.
so basically you're closing that loophole and they have to be compliant.
Yes, that's the first thing, and then the second thing is what you also
The
referred
dray-offs.
to, which is the dray-offs.
Okay, so that's different.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Our jurisdiction applies to the harbor district and to port property, and so any port property and any streets are through and adjacent to that, our tariff would apply to, and so we're banning dray-offs. in
Right,
those. You
so
can't switch
you
containers.
can't switch containers, and that's
Yeah.
what they were doing.
And that's what they were doing. Now, it also, as you pointed out, they're going off-port property to do it. We can't affect that, but we've been working closely with CARB, and CARB is doing the same thing. They've banned dray-offs, and so we're actually working with their enforcement people, and so between us
And
and
who
them,
is
we
the
can
enforcement?
get-
Is that Port Police or,
It is our port police, yes.
okay,
And they've gone through training this spring with CARB enforcement staff to learn how to identify these things, to identify a process.
what's the penalty?
$1,000 into CARB, and we've set it up so that it's the same under our tariff.
So they would pay $1,000
It's a ticket.
to CARB?
Well, here's the good news that I have for that, is that we've set up the deal as part of our arrangement with CARB, that we split the fee. So $500 goes to CARB, $500 goes to us. Now, if it's a violation of our tariff, the money goes straight to the port, of course. But even if it's off-port property, if a ticket is written by our port police, we split the fee.
What would be the mechanism, Ms. Chavez, and talk it over with the port, obviously, to maybe get that $500 placed into the nonprofit, the TRAPAC MOU? Might be an interesting use of that money, and I don't know what the mechanism would be, but it seems to me that, again, any violation is first and foremost affecting probably communities of Wilmington and San Pedro for that kind of a violation.
True?
And we have this nonprofit entity that's going to be set up that will be able to disperse funds for mitigation, job training. Be interesting place to put that penalty. I don't know what the mechanism would be, but
We'll ask that question too, and Jenny will work with you on that one.
Great.
Sounds like a good idea.
yeah. Again, locally it would go back into a fund that is being used to kind of make those neighborhoods better off.
There's no question that dray-offs have impacts on neighborhoods,
Yeah.
particularly the neighborhoods in South Wilmington.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an area there in South Wilmington.
Yeah, I know.
They occur all the time, and, we can't get at them because they're off-port property, and we get reports of it all the time. And, if they're on public streets, our police officers can, and they're violating,
Right.
the ordinances, our police officers can write tickets, but often it's on private property at the consent of a trucking company that's just allowing these things to be switched.
What can we do with the trucking companies?
Well, the CARB rule will help, because the
Okay.
CARB rule applies on public streets or
Okay.
on
All right.
private property.
So you think this will solve the problem?
It'll help.
It'll help.
And once we get through the litigation process, there may be ways that we can operate under our concessions and do it, but right now, we're in the middle of litigation.
When they're given a ticket, is there a process for, fighting it or appealing it, and where does that go?
There's a process for CARB to appeal theirs, and then there's, if you have a tariff violation,
Right.
there's a process to appeal to the port.
For the port?
Tariffs. That's right. And then you can actually operate, there's two ways to do it. It can be a misdemeanor, in which case you have to go through the courts, or you can do right through our tariff, which is an appeal to the port.
Currently, and you may not know this, but currently, how many of our tariff violations get appealed, and how many of them
I don't.
win or lose, I wonder?
That's a good question. I don't think we have that one. Fine.
Okay, I'm just curious. Okay, so you like this, you think when will this take effect?
As soon as you approve it.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Okay.
and after 30 days publication,
Okay,
the ordinance.
Okay. All right. I recommend that we approve this. Is there a second? No. I guess not. Okay, so when is this coming to full city council? Today?
Sharon?
No.
No, it's not scheduled yet.
She's like, mm-mm. All right, well, let's schedule as soon as possible.
Will do.
Thank you. Next available agenda. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next.
Under item 2, the Board of
Oh,
Harbor
there's Bill
Commissioners
Rosendahl.
Submits for approval the First Amendment to an agreement with Tetra Design Incorporated for planning, engineering, architectural, and landscaping design services for the downtown waterfront harbor project in San Pedro.
Good morning.
The amendment would extend the term by 5 years to expire on May 31, 2016, and would divide the project into 2 phases. And I'll let staff explain that part.
Good morning.
Council members?
Again.
Um,
We're joined by Councilmember Bill Rosendahl, by the way.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Councilmember Rosenthal, after a long day yesterday, too.
Yes, indeed.
Um,
Budget is great.
We were at budget yesterday.
Oh, my gosh, what time did you guys
Oh,
get
wasn't
there?
that long?
Oh, okay.
7 o'clock, 7:30.
Okay.
No break for lunch, but that's okay.
Council members, this is a request for an extension, no additional money, for the design team that's doing our downtown harbor project. This was a selection made about 3 years ago in advance of approval of the EIR as a part of an effort to fast track the design work on what we considered was the most important part of the waterfront, the downtown.
Fast track and the waterfront development cannot be in the same sentence.
An attempt.
Go ahead.
An attempt. So what we did is we started early, even before, did some preliminary design, even ahead of the approval of the EIR. In September of 2009, the EIR was certified, and we moved forward with the waterfront.
When was it certified? Say that date again.
September 2009.
September 2009.
So, moving forward with the design, as we went into, of course, that period of time, as the economy was tanking and our budgets were taking a hit,
Whatever.
we decided to move this project into phases, 2 phases for the downtown harbor. The first phase was subsequently broken down into 2 sub-phases, so that we could have something we thought we could afford and keep the project moving, not slow down design at all, and start doing the first phase of downtown harbor, which is the excavation phase. And we're getting ready to go out to bid with that right now. Design is nearing completion, and that
So
will
the
be
first phase that you're talking about right now is the downtown harbor water cuts,
Yes,
the portions of the downtown promenade,
correct.
integration of John Gibson Park into the downtown waterfront area, a new downtown harbor town square at 6th, a museum building to shelter the fireboat.
The Ralph J.
is
Scott
part of
fireboat.
this. Incorporation of public art in downtown waterfront harbor, a new North Harbor Promenade at the foot of 5th, concept development for the Salinas de San Pedro Promenade.
That's correct.
Okay, that's the first, that's what you're talking
That's
about.
Phase 1, broken into 2.
And the other element, all those other, and that's broken into 2 phases,
That's broken into 2 construction contracts.
2 construction contracts.
And they're
Okay.
dovetailed together. The first construction contract is the one that's going out to bid next month, and that'll be the excavation. That's a lot of heavy lifting on removing, actually bringing that water right up to the red car tracks. So, and then as that is,
How does
that's,
Bob feel about that? He's,
as long as the red car tracks are preserved.
yeah, okay.
And then as that construction starts to, nears completion, the next construction contract will be online for the creation of the rest of the features that you just mentioned. And
What's the price tag, do you think?
the price tag of the first one is, I believe, about 16 million. The price tag on the second is about the same. That's the 2 construction contracts. And about 25 million on the phase 2, I believe. So, and of course, as we're doing, this is all being funded out of the harbor revenue fund. So as we as we can pull some money aside in the budget, that's what we're doing. We're trying to keep that moving. That was the whole goal behind this effort, is keep the downtown harbor moving under any scenario we could see financially. So we believe we've been able to pull that off in the issuance of the RFP and this first construction contract.
Of course, my feeling is it's priorities. I mean, the money has always been there. It's just priorities. Your budget has grown larger over the years since I've been on the council, and your revenue has grown larger. Your containers, the number of containers coming through the port is up from many years ago. So I've just been frustrated because it's a priority. It either is or isn't, and it really hasn't been, unfortunately, for you guys for the last 5 years. So it's a priority. So, we're going to pay attention. Maybe the folks in budget, well, this is what you need to do in budget.
I agree.
Because it's making sure that they have this as a line item in their budget, and that we hold them accountable to that. Because otherwise, they'll say, "Oh, we don't have the money for it." When they do have, you guys have had the money for it for 5 years. You've had the money for it. You've just chosen not to do it, and it's been really frustrating to the communities. Wilmington is looking good. The buffer zone is fabulous, but the San Pedro site has really stalled. And it's really unfortunate. And I think we've lost a lot of the momentum in the downtown as a result of it. Everything we had was hanging on you developing these projects the last 5 years, and you just didn't do it. And it was really frustrating to watch, frankly, because it's been such a priority of mine, obviously, for 10 years on the city council. And you have the money. I know your budget. I know your revenue. You have the money. It's just whether or not you guys really put that aside and say, we are building this. We're not going to let anything else crowd into it. And it's been very sad to watch. Because, again, we've lost a lot of our momentum with our building, our housing in downtown San Pedro. A lot of that I blame on you guys for not building that waterfront. We had such great hopes and great dreams that promenade would have been built by now. Ports of Call would have been redone by now. People really can't believe it, that a port, the largest port complex in the country, your revenues go through the roof. And there was just no reason that this could not have been completed you should have been done in the last 5 years, really. It's been very frustrating. So I'm going to watch it this time through the budget process and make sure that it's a line item in your budget and that you really hold to this. And we've scaled back, by the way. We've scaled back tremendously on this project. You know that from what was imagined and designed, 10 years ago. It's really been scaled back. So we've scaled back the water cuts with the idea of bringing the USS Iowa. So we've scaled it back a bit.
Well, I think, Councilwoman, you'll be pleased to know that the downtown harbor itself has not been scaled back at this point. This is the full-blown downtown harbor.
But the water cuts have been scaled back.
Only the North Harbor cut.
Well, but
North Harbor cut.
Those were worth
Iowa.
Those were worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
You're not spending.
And that will help. That was one of the last things that we were going to be going forward with. But yes, it will help, and we can put that money towards other things on the waterfront. But we're pleased.
I think for me, it's been frustrating for me is to keep you on schedule. That's what's been frustrating to me. You've missed every possible benchmark and deadline that was ever put up on a board.
We would invite you to watch us carefully on this one, because this one we're very committed to meeting the schedule.
Remember how many times I brought this waterfront to the city council since I've been elected? Remember the meeting we had, the city council meeting in Pedro? How many years ago was that? And Geraldine got up and made the whole presentation and the dates of when all this was going to happen. You've missed every single one of them. It's really sad.
Well,
I've never really quite figured out why it wasn't a priority.
But watch us on this one, Councilwoman. Watch us on this one.
I'm sure you've heard this, and I know it's not part of this contract, but part of the realignment of 7th Street, Harbor Boulevard, Sampson Way, that I've been hearing concerns about the wall that is being erected between the waterfront and the downtown. It seems to be contrary to one of those principles that we used to set forth of this connection between downtown San Pedro and our waterfront. It's quite a barrier when I've seen the designs. And I've talked to Tony Giello about it. And again, I know it's not part of this, but I was going to bring it up to have you maybe pay attention and see if there was a different way we could, but don't use that as an excuse to delay anything.
No delays.
A better sloping of that project as opposed to building a wall.
Well,
Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yes, and that's a good observation because as we've moved from kind of a two-dimensional preliminary concept to the real three-dimensional design on that part,
Right.
it is at the southern edge of
Right.
downtown harbor
Right.
issue that's in front of you.
Right.
As we've moved this into 3 dimensions, that has arisen as a significant issue.
Right.
We've had a number of discussions with your office and also with the community, and that's significant. And we've put a lot of effort in the past few weeks, and we'll continue to do so to make sure that comes.
The other thing I think is weird is the way one of the alternatives on how you're connecting Sampson Way to Harbor Boulevard. It's a really weird little jog.
When the EIR went forward, there was
Doesn't make sense to me.
There was it was a very large intersection at 7th Street and Harbor, and as we got into the design effort and the community feedback we got was consistent with this as well. There's a lot of concern over the length of those crosswalks
Yes.
and making sure we kept
Intersection was gigantic.
Right. Make sure we kept the connection from 7th Street down to that real important junction at the 7th Street Pier, which is that interface between the downtown harbor and the Ports of Call development. So we've had 3 public workshops now where we've looked at different ways we can deal with that intersection to get it shorter to make that crosswalk
I
more
agree, but I
solid.
think, but the one you've chosen makes a weird jog. You have to kind of come down and then turn right. I don't know, the one I saw, I didn't think it looked very smooth.
There's an alternative that does, as you mentioned. We're still vetting that with the community. We're actually getting quite a bit of positive feedback from the community on that.
How are you interfacing with our Department of Transportation? Because, by the way, that's not your property. That's a city street.
The Sampson Way is ours.
Yeah, the harbor is ours.
City.
Right. So how are you interfacing with our folks, our Department of Transportation, on the realignment?
The time is not quite yet to do that because we wanted to get the community and local feedback first. Once we come up with a recommendation, that's when we were planning on taking that back to DOT.
My advice to you is to get the DOT engineers involved now, because actually they might have a solution that maybe would work as well or better.
DOT was involved at the EIR stage, but that's good advice.
I don't know.
We'll
I think sometimes if you wait till the very end and present it to them, then it's, those engineers are smart. Those guys can figure out solutions many times.
The transportation committees.
Yeah, and it's our street, so I would do it now. I would get them involved.
Can I just ask one quick question here?
Yes.
The timetable I'm seeing now is May 31st, 2016. Is that when this would be done?
That would be correct. Now this contract does design, and it also covers the entire period of construction.
Yeah.
Because we use these engineers for questions that come from the contractor during construction, and then we also use them for the closeout of the construction contract. So that's the time period that we want coverage for the entire downtown harbor, both phases, all phases, including 7th Street.
So while she's in the House of Representatives, I'll be in my 3rd term here, which will be finished in 2017. So we'll get done. We'll sit here and make sure it's
Councilman,
done.
we would hope both of you will be there for the ribbon cuttings on these.
Yeah, we look forward to that.
Not holding my breath.
You'll have to.
One of the things, like, again, just to get the DOT engineers involved, because again, sometimes I think that's what lengthens this process, is when you wait till you've presented your plan, and then if there's changes, or then that's, in my opinion, what delays things. So I'm a big believer in kind of getting everybody on the front end of the process to come up with a plan that works. So
Certainly will do
that would be my suggestion. And you're still looking forward to accommodating the USS Iowa if it's awarded to us in this plan?
Yes, Councilwoman Berth, at the berth just north of this downtown harbor.
Now, I obviously want to be kept updated on all this, so maybe we could have regular reports so we can keep you on track. Do these design elements have to be approved by the Harbor Commission?
I'm not sure, Councilwoman, what you mean by the design elements.
Well, just everything that will be going forward, the ultimate designs, the final plans, or what goes to the
The commission would receive, we'd go back to the commission for approval of all the contracts. So long as we stay true to the certified EIR, we would not typically go back to
Okay.
the commission for a
Okay.
design concept review
Okay.
for approval.
All right. I'm just trying to figure out where,
The commission
Where I
has
can get
indicated
involved.
they would like to get.
where I can
regular-
meddle.
Where the commission has indicated they'd like to get regular reports.
Okay.
But the actual decision points would be related to the contracts.
Okay.
And I might mention that the construction contracts will go to the meeting, I believe it's Thursday. We have the construction contract for the Ghostfish going to the commission. That's the SP Slip Ghostfish, which is be that piece of iconic art that'll go down at Outros.
Right.
That's happening this Thursday.
How many jobs will this,
There you go.
these phases create?
Off the top of my head, we continue at that rate of spending of about $16 million a year. That's about 200 jobs.
Great.
I bet there's more jobs in this waterfront.
But yeah, we'll overlay
Construction.
that with everything else that goes
Could
on.
you give me that
Fish
report
will
back
have it.
too, and
Yes, be glad to.
how many jobs that this will create? Because I think, and this will be under the project labor agreement?
Different phases of it will, yes.
Not all of it?
The Ghostfish is not, I believe Downtown Harbor is. So the one that you're talking
We don't
about
have a
here-
ghost fish union? But the downtown.
The Downtown Harbor, I'd have to look at my
Okay.
list, but I believe that was part of
All
the
right,
deal.
well, if you get me those two answers. Okay, and then you're going to, I can trust you to work with the community on the Great Wall that they are not comfortable with.
Absolutely.
Okay,
In fact, I've personally been in 2 meetings in the past
Okay.
3 weeks
okay,
on that exact issue.
okay. And we think there's a better design that will work, that won't block off.
Yes, and we'll work, I've had
Okay.
several discussions with Gordon,
Okay.
and we'll continue to work with you.
All right, do we have what are we doing? Are we approving this? Do you
Yeah,
want to
so
do a
moved.
motion to approve?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I would like to request monthly updates. To keep you on track. And shall we go back to item 1, since we have Bill here? Bill?
Yes, indeed.
And would you,
I will so move and second it.
great. So both of those are going to be 2-0. We will approve both of those and move them forward to full city council as soon as legally possible.
And thank you very much, Councilwoman, for keeping us on track here and having a special meeting today.
And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. Let's do it. Clean trucks, a new waterfront. There's so much promise there. So much promise. Okay.
Still got these, yeah.
I heard.
I gotta put it in here just so you know where I'm at, and we should do something about it. Right here's my quote at the end.
Oh, this meeting is adjourned.
You go, you take her back.